juggle, I know. And there was more room here anyway. That seemed to relieve her. Thank you for understanding. But everyone is leaving this afternoon, so I do hope you're coming back to the townhouse with us as planned. If I can hold out until you're ready to leave, he said dryly. She flashed him a veiled glance. I'm sure wedding celebrations aren't your favourite. His heart dropped into his stomach. Was she referring to Hannah? He hadn't thought any of Zoe's family knew about that part of his life. What makes you say that? He asked hoarsely. Well, I assume any bachelor would find weddings dull, but especially you, she laughed gaily. No, she didn't know about Hannah. Relief flooding him, he forced a sardonic smile. Weddings are more exhausting than dull. Between fleecing all the lords in the card room and comforting all the disappointed young lovelies who missed out on snagging the groom, I'm fairly worn out. Comforting? Is that what they're calling it now? She shook her head. I see that your travels haven't changed you one whit. You're as incorrigible as ever. You know me. He somehow managed a light tone. What's the fun in being corrigible? Thank God she hadn't guessed at the truth. That he hated weddings because they reminded him of his own over a decade ago, which had been followed 6 months later by a funeral with 2 coffins, one for his wife and one for his stillborn son. Regret and anger roiled in his gut. Damn it, he'd suppressed the image of those coffins for a while now. Must it rise again every time he attended some fool's wedding? Fortunately, Zoe didn't seem to notice his consternation. Anyway, she said breezily, I thought I should tell you that your sister and your mother are on their way to London. God help him. That was the last thing he needed. I suppose they think to fetch me back home to Montague. Situated on the banks of the Brandywine River, a few hours from Philadelphia, his family homestead held the largest of the textile mills that were the source of his family's fortune. And now that his late, unlamented father was dead, his sister Amanda was running them all, since she possessed a half-interest in the properties. He held the other half, although he'd toss it into the sea before he'd set foot on Montague land again. The better choice, of course, was to sell Amanda his half. She wanted it, and he wanted to give it to her. But since the properties had all come from his mother's family, Father's will demanded that Mother agree to the sale, and so far she had refused, confound her. She ought to know better than to think he would return to run the mills. He loved his mother and sister dearly, but Father's death hadn't changed a damn thing about his feelings for Montague. He would rather cut his own throat than carry on Father's legacy, and the sooner Mother realized it, the better off everyone would be. When do they leave for England? Jeremy asked. How much time did he have to prepare? When did they leave for England, you mean? They should arrive within a few weeks. She ducked her gaze. No doubt they departed as soon as they got my letter. Your letter? Zoe stuck out her chin, though she still wouldn't meet his eyes. You can't blame me for taking pity on them. You don't keep them informed about where you're headed. Because it's none of their concern. When she flinched, he moderated his tone. And because I rarely know where I'm going next. I could write and say I'm sailing the Danube with an Austrian prince and his consort, but by the time they receive the letter, I'm likely to have befriended some monk with an alpine refuge full of sculptures that I'm off to view. Precisely, she said hotly. As you're so fond of saying, you blow with the wind. That makes it hard for them to keep up with you. They don't need to. He crossed his arms over his chest. The point of this trip across the Atlantic was that I got to travel the British Isles and the continent to see works of art I'd never experienced. And to make a life for himself well away from home. They know that. Yes, but Amanda is desperate to speak to you about your father's estate. So when she wrote asking after you, I told her that you were returning to London to view the British Institution's annual summer exhibition before it closes at the end of the month. I thought your family might get the letter in time to be here for that, but I gather that the crossings have been rough recently, so my letter and their ship will probably delay.